Hello everybody and welcome to another E5 podcast. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Paul Meenan and today with me, my brother from our other mother is with me. Introduce yourself.
Hello mate, it's David, Sparky Ninja.
And today we're going to introduce you to someone new, although he's not new to us and he's not new to anyone who's on social media in the electrical industry. Would you like to introduce yourself, good sir?
Yeah, good evening. My name's Chris Beanie and I'm from Juice Electrical Services in East Sussex.
Juice Electrical Services. You're the one with the nice orange logo on Twitter, aren't you?
That's it, the bright orange one, the happy one.
Yes, the happy orange logo. So for anyone who doesn't know him, you're on Twitter. What social media are you on? Just so that if people want to follow you, they can.
Yeah, mainly Twitter it is, to be quite honest with you. I've tried Facebook, but I don't find it that
Toxic.
that engaging and that productive, and it's quite hard work to steer what the information you want to put on it. So Twitter's nice, blunt, sharp, and out the door.
Sometimes too blunt.
So exactly, yes.
It's one of those logos that it's just like familiar. You know, that big orange juice. You know, it's one that's been there as long as I can remember. So it's nice to actually, finally speak to you and
Yeah, no, that's
We did actually meet him at an Alex.
Probably. I'm sorry.
I remember you.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I always remember.
Which one was it? Was it Sandown or something?
Oh no, it was long before that. It was
long before that.
Coventry.
Yes.
Well over a year ago.
Was I even there?
Yes, I think you were there somewhere in spirit.
I've been there.
I don't think
I have got the original E5 badge.
The original E5 badge.
There you go. Yes, look.
Yes.
Wow.
It's still in its packet.
It's still in its packet. Oh, that was money well spent then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Save it as a collector's item eventually, maybe.
Yeah, no, I've got the other one is on my corporate wear.
Awesome. Right, so for those who want to, and this is my view, if you want to know how to do Twitter professionally, I would suggest you follow Electrical Juice because it's one of those few accounts that actually conducts itself really well. You use Twitter really, really well. I've never in all the time known you to be negative, spiteful, bitter, aggressive, angry. You've been positive, succinct, to the point. So yeah, a good one to follow, to be honest with you. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that you and the way you've behaved on Twitter has actually influenced the way I behave on Twitter.
Really? Blimey, that's a compliment. Thank you very much.
No, it is. It's a compliment well deserved. Henceforth, why I wanted you on the podcast so that we can actually talk about this and I can flatter you to your face over Cyberworld. So before we get into anything else, you've introduced yourself, Chris. Juice Electrical. Tell us a little bit about your background, your story, what you do, sector you work in, the whole lot. Go for it.
Right. Okay. Juice Electrical Services is a relatively new kid on the block, for want of a better description. It was something that I was kind of forced to do, chose to do. Through a couple of incidents that I actually had with another electrician. But going well back, I actually, upon finishing school, secondary school, I didn't actually even have a summer holiday. I just went straight in as an apprentice on the old British Rail, as it was back then. So I joined British Rail and I took on a 4-year apprenticeship, I believe.
I have to be really careful what I say because he's ex-railway and he's done railway apprenticeship, so there'll be no witty puns or put downs of British or Network Rail in any way. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, Chris.
Yes. So, and I managed to stay with them up until 90. I think I was there 91 to 97, if my memory serves me correct. So yes, I joined the British Railways Board and I was on the S&T department, which is Signalling and Telecoms department.
I know it well.
So that's where I ended up straight from school. Did a apprenticeship with them and got my ONC in electrical and electronic engineering.
Wow.
And then from that, you was able to go to various depots and have interviews, and I ended up being a trackside cable jointer.
Wow.
So basically from Victoria down to Brighton, across to Chichester and over to Hastings. So
I was actually an S&T engineer grade 1 from Paddington all the way out to Windsor and Slough.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, because when I came out of my apprenticeship, I wanted to understand the rest of the railway, and I took this job doing signalling in the S&T department based out of Ealing Depot, and it was very strange, different world.
It is a completely different world.
It is a completely different world,
and that is one thing that I regret leaving the railway to a degree. Yeah. But there was various instances that made me think about leaving. I completed my apprenticeship and I had some good training on the railway, but upon leaving the railway, what I say, stepping out into the real world, it was, like you say, a really daunting process. It was I can only liken it to coming out of the army. It was like, oh, this is the real world. What do people actually want doing? I've got no skills in the real world. I can work on a railway line, but who's got one of those? So yeah, it was a bit daunting, to say the least.
Was the apprenticeship was that just at a college, or was it kind of like customized into the rail industry?
Yeah, I attended Croydon College for a 3-year period. And they actually done I think it was with BTEC back then.
Right. Yeah.
And I got, and basically they did tailor some of the course modules to suit what we were doing. Yeah. Yeah. But we also had to obviously take part in in-house training. Mm-hmm. So a part of my training process was, I went on lodge to places like Crewe and Derby, and our courses were residential and 3-4 weeks long. And we were actually taught live side and all sorts of stuff. So I picked up some really, really good skills, and health and safety was paramount.
So once you've come to the end of your time with rail, you've decided to move on. I mean, how did you determine what you were capable to do immediately, or if you would, did you think that you could take on anything? Or you've already mentioned it's a bit like leaving the army. How did you decide to reapproach other areas of this industry? Or
to be quite honest, I was lost.
Yeah,
I was actually quite lost with it all. I'd served my apprenticeship under the wing of a really good engineer. Who sadly succumbed to illness, and it kind of messed the department up to a degree, and there was a bit of a power struggle and one thing another, and I found my tools and everything in a skip. Oh, wow. So it was kind of like, okay, it's all getting a bit. There's tetchy, yes. There's the usual. Apprentice jokes. There's the usual apprentice initiation ceremonies. All fun, all banter, all to be accepted in the decade that was the early 90s. Yeah. And it was acceptable and a known thing, but it started to get a little bit silly.
Actually, I think it's worth adding. I mean, without going into the world of banter, because we see banter thrown around a lot today, but you say there in the world of the 90s, I think a lot of today's apprentices and younger people probably are just not as succumbed to that in modern society and that kind of behaviour. And I think
I think that comes down to social skills as well, though.
I agree completely. It's it's not really down to the industry to change, but I think the world's changed.
Absolutely,
I think a lot of that is down there. So I mean, this rings true with what I've seen before in world of training. I mean, I've seen guys go through their apprenticeships, get their GIB cards, but all they've ever done is street lighting. And they can quite easily become institutionalized in a certain area of industry, a certain unique niche. And those guys become expert at that niche. But, the question really is, how does the industry, or what kind of support mechanisms are there to allow people to then spread out into other areas of work? Do they gamble? Do they take a punt? Or, do you feel that there was opportunities for you to then seek further support to move out and branch out into other industries? Or did you have to try to learn and gain some more experience as you went into other areas of the, outside of rail?
I'll be honest with you. There was an opportunity to take what I consider to have been a bit of a backward step. I actually went fitting intruder alarms for a company. So I was actually doing security and fire alarms, but I actually was on the security side more so. Well before wireless security, so everything was hardwired. So I applied my skills to that, and to be quite honest, I found it a little bit not so challenging.
That probably means it was a sensible decision though, because it allowed you to gradually step into another area.
That's right. I didn't go full steam and pick up and go into something that I couldn't manage, couldn't handle, and I had to obviously retrain my skills, because on the railway I could have banter with colleagues.
Yeah.
On the security, I was actually working in customers' houses. They weren't my customers, but it's a whole different approach.
Big difference.
And a whole different support mechanism, and you are the face of the company, rather than working within the company. So I'd like to think it taught me some other skills. So I've gained from a backward step, I suppose, and I took what I could from it, and obviously have brought it forward into all the other.
So can I just add to that, because I had a very similar. So I completed my time, served my time, left the company I did my apprenticeship with, but I found I was thirsty and hungry to understand why we did what we did as an electrical contractor on railway, and I wanted to understand the railway. So I wanted to know the track, the signalling, everything, all the interconnectivity, because I thought it would just make me more consciously competent in. I didn't know these terms at the time, but looking back, it was because I was scared. I wanted to know more. And I went and did S&T for a year, and I remember the interview, the guy said, we need a qualified electrician to do all the install work, and I was like, great, I can do that, and in return we'll teach you signalling. And I went, and you probably remember these courses, BS1, BS2, basic signalling 1, basic signalling 2. If you're going to work on signalling, you need to hold those additional training, which I went to Bristol for. I ended up doing a TPWS installation, which was this new technology they were trialing. And I ended up doing all the install and pretty much nothing else. And to be honest with you, I got bored. The minute I understood how a signalling circuit worked and the length of runs and how they managed it all with trackside relays and all the rest of it, I was just like, there really isn't much else to this. Oh, my God. And I got into a pickle where I was just in conflict with my manager at the time, who refused to develop me as he'd promised. So I offered to pay for the training. He refused. I offered to take annual leave. He then refused that. And I said, well, I'll pay for it and take annual leave. And he still refused. So I was like, you're just carrot dangling. You're carrot dangling. So I ended up then taking the biggest leap of my career, which was then I took a job going to do central heating wiring in British Gas. And I've never done it. And I tell you now, what you just said resonated, because the first time I did the training up in Yorkshire for 4 weeks, shadowing someone, the first time I walked in someone's house, it was different banter, different behaviours, different expectations. And yeah, okay, I did domestic the first year of my apprenticeship, but when you're fully qualified and you're thinking, hang on, in a few weeks I'll be out leading this and doing this, pay attention, smarten up. It's very scary. And I developed a hell of a healthy fear and respect for domestic electrical installations, which for someone who's mainly industrial, not a lot of industrial guys do. And I think a lot of industrial guys should have a healthy respect for it, because in my personal view, if you just do industrial and you go to domestic, you may think it's simple. It's not. There's a lot of complexities. And I think it's the same with domestic going into industrial.
Absolutely. Obviously, you can relate, having been on the railway yourself. It's a lot more coarse, a lot more agricultural, and then you've got to go into somebody's home where there's actually carpets and coving and pictures and decorative furniture and fixtures and fittings that you're on the railway you're used to lumping heavy duty stuff about. It's a completely different ball game altogether. You can spend 3 hours before you really get started in someone's houses moving all their furniture, because you've said, well, I need this doing and this doing, and then you turn and you go, right, I've got to empty your boiler cupboard, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to lift your floorboards up. Oh, you're still living in the house, you're still wandering around, I've got to work around you politely without swearing at you. And it's difficult. And also you had you had manpower, people power. You had other colleagues with you to all muck in and do the same job. Whereas on a domestic, especially on the alarms, you was lucky if you was actually even paired up with anybody. You was out on your own, and you was doing it on your own.
That's a valid point, because a lot of people criticise the railway, including myself actually, for the volume of labour that they actually do have available to them to do work is mind-blowing. I mean, I've seen. I once watched. I remember. I'll never forget it. I was trackside. I was actually just walking outside of Paddington, and there were some chaps on the end of a platform putting up a new mirror, and there must have been 8 of them just on the platform putting up a mirror. And I didn't realise at the time that one of the blokes was the controller of site safety, or what we know as the COS now, or the person in charge of works. And then you had someone who dealt with possessions, and then there was a supervisor, and then 2 guys doing the work. And the safety policies and procedures on rail are, when they're used and when they're implemented, incredibly robust.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is why you can spend 20 grand putting up a light fitting on the railway. And that's a true story, by the way, because I have seen 20 grand put a light up. But just because of the complexities of it, it actually costs that much in time and labour.
Yeah, and there's not a lot to show for it. But as you say, the time and the effort and the manpower and the energy that's put into it can be excessive for those people that don't actually understand the protocols that have got to be gone through.
Yeah, well, it's people always complain. One of the biggest complaints I've ever had from people who complain about train delays or possessions or stuff overrunning, and they go, "Oh, it's disgraceful. The trains are always late." By the way, I just want to say these are not the views of C2C, my employer. These are mine, based on my experience. Nice. But they always complain the trains are late and stuff, and you think, well, you're trying to replace and work on Victorian infrastructure, and we only get like 4 hours a night. And this stuff needs to be maintained, inspected, repaired, replaced. And you can't do that by waving a magic wand. And let's be honest about it, we're bloody good at it now. Because you go at Christmas, they'll replace an entire section, all the points, the crossings. They'll produce miracles replacing the most complex junctions in like 48 hours flat. And that's because they map every 5 or 10 minutes. And they know what every piece of labour is doing. And it's incredible. If you schedule the work, it can be done really well. But it's really complex. It's really difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And when I was a trainee and doing further years after my training, obviously there was no such thing as mobile phones. We were running around in Sherpa vans and
jump in the van and tell someone.
That's it. Yeah. And it was a case of that we actually use the trackside phones to communicate and so on and so forth. We couldn't ask Dr. Google for help. We were there, the manuals, the books, everything came out, and it was hard graft at times.
Definitely double-edged sword that though with the Google, because I think a lot of people try the work who aren't really technically competent at all, but they allow Google to give them that extra bit of confidence and that extra bit of I'm constantly trying to just
Are you telling me everything you see on Google isn't 100% true and real?
It depends who's saying it, mate.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly finding like people like even coming into my little communities. I'm constantly trying to identify their posts, what they're trying to get from the group. It's like no. I'm on your website at the moment. It looks like you're doing a lot of domestic services now, domestic work. Is that
the best mostly domestic. The website is actually, there's a secondary website being done now because that's a bit dated.
See, there's quite a bit of information on safety and security, so I can see your background in there coming into that as well.
Yeah. And we look after the local independent cinema, so we do reactive call-outs for the local cinema, as well as maintenance and EICRs and keeping them all nice and compliant, as it were, and safe.
So you've moved over. You've kind of settled into domestic, but a bit of commercial here or there where you find will benefit from you.
We are moving more towards commercial. I've just actually last week just picked up a maintenance and a new works contract for a Park Homes site. So cool.
Is that mobile homes, is it? Or?
Yes, static mobile homes. So it's a national.
I used to maintain one of those in the Hurley area, which is a little village near Maidenhead.
Right. Yeah. So it's a national company, but we've got the local site, which is good.
It was quite fun actually, because I don't know what mobile what the sites you would be doing. They're probably better than what I had, but what we had was basically buried aluminium cables, which were all breaking down, which we had to keep extending and joining. And every single caravan or mobile home, you're supposed to call it, pitch, had 20 amps only. So you'd have a circle or a ring of these units, and then there'd be an RCD for individual protection, an MCB for individual protection. There'll be this 1.5 or 2.5 mil armor going under the ground up to the pitch, but then the mobile home will come with 25-meter tails, and you've got to make this magic happen of connecting the 1.5 armor to the 25 mil tails, and you've got to finish off the EIC, which is part completed from where they made the thing. And the thing's got it's got 3 or 4 socket circuits. It's got electric cooker. They want power out in the shed for their washing machines. It's a home from home. But they've only got 20 amps.
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. Everything's got is concentric twin on this site, as far as I can tell so far. But some of the homes are quite dated, and they're going through a bit of a... They'll get replaced
with new ones.
Yes.
They smell terrific.
Yeah.
It's all electric.
Yeah. So that's got some interesting times ahead on that one. As I say, we look after the cinema, which is quite a prestigious one to have on the books. I've done a bit of work for the Samaritans, their local offices, and we've refurbed an Ironmonger's with new LED lighting panels because they had a suspended ceiling and everything fitted. So, and to be fair, going back to the railway again, I think it's more appealing for me. Not appealing for everyone, but it's more appealing for me because for me it feels more productive.
Yeah,
doing the domestic, you can do a whole day's work and look around and go, oh, I've not actually really achieved over a lot because it's very finicky and there's a lot of finesse at times. If to do it properly,
a lot of domestic is management of the work because you're doing it all yourself, and you can't sometimes with domestic stand back and actually be in awe of your work, except for maybe outside garden work or lighting work. Everything's buried, everything's hidden. Whilst in the commercial site, you can actually look at the great execution of your wiring systems and your bends and all that stuff.
That's it, yeah. And I get a lot of, as weird as it seems, I get a lot of pleasure of dealing with steel wired armoured.
I have found that I constantly bring into the domestic sector the best practice from industrial. So my old house, in my loft, my upstairs lighting circuit, it was all wired in conduit. All my lights were wired on rock roses.
Yeah, well, you've put conduit to your sockets in the wall, haven't you?
I have. I put two 20mm conduits in the wall for my sockets. The next electrician is going to love me. In 20, 30 years' time, is going to go, what a touch this bloke was. There's more than enough sockets in each room, but I'm about to tear my ceiling down, funnily enough, in my hallway so that I can wire my lights. And what I'm thinking of doing is actually wiring, because I've seen it on some of the Twitter guys. What they're now doing is they're basically getting like a Sorel box and they're using fixed base connectors.
I've seen
and they're wiring all of their 3-plate lighting system and then just putting stuffing glands in the top and just running a twin and earth to each point.
Yeah,
and then it makes it all accessible, maintainable, really, really simple. And I love that. So I think I'm going to wire my domestic lighting into a Sorel box underneath my board somewhere, and then just have it all run out that way. So that'll be an interesting one.
And allow for extra cores as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Extra space.
Well, I have been asked if I'm going to run Cat 5 or Cat 6 for my lighting, and my response is over my dead body. Twin and earth thermosetting is enough for me. To be honest with you, that's about it. I have considered emergency lighting as well in my house, but then I thought, nah.
So, I mean, Chris, are you finding the domestic sector okay? You know, are you able to do a good job, able to be competitive in your areas?
Yeah, this obviously crops up time and time again.
Yeah.
After finishing with the security company, I actually went and worked for a power tools and fixings company for a while because it's just a new avenue. And I started on the shop floor, and I actually ended up managing it and running it. But that enabled me to get a handle on accounting. And they used Sage, and I now actually use QuickBooks. But I was able to look at things like GP, profit and loss, and I'm very a stickler for that. And going back to your question, I know how much it costs me per day to go to work. So if you look at the number of working days there are between the 1st of April and the 31st of March, excluding weekends and bank holidays, I think it's 256 or something days available. I know what my sort of set costs are going to be, so I know what my my memberships and so on and so forth. Currently it's costing me £42 and some odd pence to go to work every day currently.
That's an interesting way to break that down. I like that.
So I have to go out at a price where I can cover those costs, and that's just my running costs, and then I actually have to look at my wages and everything else. So
I think Lee Ward and Karen Boom have done something similar, where they've been arguing with potential clients, and the clients have always said, well, what's your best price? And that seems expensive. But when you actually look at the cost breakdown, it's not, because they have to pay their professional fees, their company fees, their insurances, their van insurances, their other public liability insurances, and before they've picked up their toolbox in the morning, they're out of pocket.
That's it. Yeah. I've got obviously waste carrier's license. I've got a skip. Professional indemnity insurance. Member of the competent person scheme. I've got certification software fees, everything.
It all adds up.
Yeah, it all adds up. And somebody has to pay for that.
So when it comes to domestic, it's just like any other sector. If the work is going to hit your profit, your point, then fine. If not, then no.
That's it. I don't. Yeah, I don't. I do have a scalable set of charges. So if it's only half a day's work, then it's obviously per hour. It's more than a full day's work. If you give me 3 days work, then that's slightly less again, the hourly rate. And then I've got a weekly thing. So
that's a bit like how I do training, for example, because I also think about if my travel and logistics, and if I stay away, those things.
And it's one invoice and one payment at the end of the day. So if I've got one customer and I'm working for them for 3 weeks, that's a lot easier than me doing 30 jobs over 10 days, 3 jobs a day, and that's a lot of effort that then I've got to sit in the office creating certs and everything else. And all the time that I'm doing that, I'm not actually earning.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally, a lot of people that push the price down, they still got to earn their money. And I think a lot of the times the things that is sacrificed is, like you said, that time in the office, that administration, that's where the quality gets lost.
Yeah.
With a lot of work, we see reports, we see paperwork that's just basically been scribed on the back of a fag packet.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
The only thing I do kind of struggle a little bit with is the EICRs.
I bet.
I don't do them for the price that I would like to do them for.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't get any at all. But I do them. I'm not the cheapest at doing them, but it does feel to me as if EICRs are going the same way as PAT testing and everything else. I've said
that so many times. It is the new PAT testing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, though, because that makes it so much more. It makes it so dangerous and makes installation so vulnerable. It's criminal.
But it's the same with PAT testing. We have a disrespect for PAT testing because we abuse PAT testing. We'll have a disrespect for EICRs.
Can I just make a public announcement? If anyone ever comes near any site or railway or company I ever work for, and you try and offer me some cheap PAT testing EICR shit, God help you. I will Liam Neeson your ass. Anyway, moving on. Sorry.
Well, it usually takes. I usually allow a day for doing an EICR, and then I've probably got a good 2 to 3 hours of writing up the report. And
I can't really do them. I can't really do them because I can't compete. But I'm like that. I want a day, and then if I get enough for the client to then give them a report, I will. If not, I'd recommend more time. But I give them full control over that.
I suppose I'm scared, for want of a better word. It's my name that's going on the bottom of the document, and I want to have a full and appreciative understanding of what I'm actually testing and what is the condition of that, because I'm signing it off. That's the bottom line.
When I was testing, when I used to open the boards, I wouldn't complete a circuit until I could map it. I wanted to be able to map it in my head and know every point on that installation and be able to visualize it, so that when I was doing my test, I could visualize how that circuit was functioning, and I was 100% happy with the readings. Used to piss my employers off saying rotten, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I mean, I always look at trying to find ways to educate the client properly with this kind of thing, and I just gave my old man a hand down at a race course down in Ascot, and it's been tested since built 3 times now. The last one, just a load of nonsense. And so the guys had my old man. We used to run the contract there before it was knocked down and rebuilt, and so they know our name. The Watts name is get them back. This don't work. Problems, get them back. And my old man is always there at the moment. He doesn't want to be necessarily. He's trying to do training, but he's basically trying to keep everything happy. But he's been asked to do the ICR, and he said, "Well, I don't know how it's going to take, and I'm not going to charge you per circuit, but I'll give you a day rate, and we'll see how we go."
Yeah.
But he then spoke to the guy. He said, "Well, here's the thing, and here's our advice, and here's a recommendation." And he'll go, "Why wasn't that picked up before?" Don't know. So we're looking in void spaces. We're following the wiring system. We're finding wiring systems that are still held up with string. From when they were part complete. That's been remedied. But this has been put into service. This has run the biggest race events in the calendar.
In all fairness, Dave, I have found sub-main armoured that were tied up with a bit of rope when they were being pulled in and left because nobody bothered going back to cleat them. So it's not just.
I've seen saddles. When you put up conduits and saddles, you put the one screw in, then you take the screw out, you snap it, and then you snap it, but you forget to put that screw in. And so we have conduit runs where there's just one screw per saddle.
That's lazy. That's no QA. That's laziness.
But that's the thing. So
but it's the out of sight, out of mind mentality. And at the end of the day, it works. That seems to be a common phrase. Oh well, but it works. It doesn't matter what's going on behind the scenes. Well, I'm afraid it does, and that's why I cost what I cost.
This brings me full circle, and I've said this to Paul so many times. We need to try to find ways to educate clients because the industry doesn't do enough to educate the clients.
No.
Our industry doesn't do enough to educate the clients. It'll just say, you make sure you use our registered persons, but that doesn't actually say, and you should expect this from them.
Yeah.
In my defense, I am actually a client now, and I do laugh when people come up to me and go, I'm registered with this body, and I just go, what does that actually mean in 2020?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
No, it doesn't, sadly. It does shock quite a few people as well when I actually sit. I've sat in design meetings and rooms with 50 people and somebody's gone, oh, yeah, but the contractor uses this and they're registered with this. And I just go, sorry, where did you get your propaganda from? You honestly think I believe all? Do you actually know anything about my industry? And then they just sit there and go, oh, yeah. Okay. But in fairness, in a recent meeting, somebody went, "Yeah, I've listened to his podcast. Shut up."
Sit back down again.
I work with companies developing rule procedures, and I'll wait to turn that page about competency, selection of contractors, and I'll be looking for those mentions of a JIB or an NIC or similar, and I'll be going, right, how do I step backwards and reverse engineer this? How do I actually find out their decision-making processes? How do I tell them what to do? And you can't do that in 5 minutes.
No.
And that sometimes is the biggest challenge, actually getting education to management to actually make effective competence decisions. So, Paul, your experience with assessing competence, aren't you? It is. But it's a hard thing to do.
Let's be perfectly frank. So the 2 occasions in my career where I've assessed competence was when I was an NICQS for EDF, and I was employing field engineers, and I developed a knowledge and practical assessment which no one actually passed. It was so hard. And my boss gave me a bollocking. He said, listen, NIC area engineers couldn't pass that assessment. I've still got it somewhere, actually. It was very thorough. Probably too thorough, but that's the standard. I want them to at least try and attain it. Looking back, it was a terrible mistake. And also behavioural competence when it comes to professional registration. Because when you get professionally registered, I don't go out and assess conduit bending. I assess people's ability to understand a framework of behaviours.
Yeah, and the thing is, there are so many different ways to assess competence. I did some work with a food manufacturer in one of their biscuit factories. They had a nasty incident, and then there was an incident investigation, and I got brought in as a consultant to kind of help with that problem. And when it comes to how do we determine competence, I said, well, I'm just a consultant. Let me come into your place of work and speak with your experts. So I spoke with the guys who actually have been working at this factory for 20 years. And I said to them, right, someone's coming in fresh out of college. What do they have to do? What do they have to be able to do? And they came up with a 120 question written test paper.
Wow.
And they still, this is This is 10 years ago. They're still using it today as part of their induction process for new contractors in their system. 120 questions in an induction.
Mm.
You know,
Wow.
And I've said to them, when I go back and we do a 3-yearly audit of their RV rules, I go, does that still work? And they go, yeah, it's fine. You know, they've decided they've broken a couple of them down
as well.
Top ups. Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
But if the bar's set high enough, then for me that gives me a greater target. There's no satisfaction in passing something that's
difficult.
Everybody else can pass, and it's just on a sort of lame level, for want of a better terminology. You know, I'd rather get almost to the top and fail than to have got well over the top and down the other side and gone, well, that was easy, and I didn't really sort of actually gain anything from it.
So like the old 2391, when I got that, I knew it was such a hard course to attain, like the old 2400, the design course. And when I got them, I was just so made up. But I had an awareness when I was doing the assessments that I was good enough to pass it, which was for me far more important than an exam. I didn't really care for the exams, to be honest with you. It was more actually having got through the brilliant learning.
I was the same with the 239120, which is the old 2396, the design course. I didn't really need to achieve the qualification, but I wanted the opportunity to try the exam. So I sat the exam. I didn't do the project because I didn't need the qualification. I sat the exam. I nearly ran out of room in the exam paper. Two of the questions were two of the questions were incorrectly written, and I actually said to the examiner in the paper, well, if you meant this, it's this way. If you meant this, it's this way. I got a distinction. I got my piece of paper that says you've done a distinction in that unit, go and get the rest. I went, nah, that's enough, thanks.
I've proved my point.
I proved my point. But but then I thought, well, how could that be better? And and it needs to be a bit better. We need to always have places to go further.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the first to admit it. Unlike you two guys, I can't roll off regulation numbers. I do struggle academically with things being described in a paragraph. If it's put in front of me, I've got a lot more of a chance in sorting a problem out or designing something than I have if it's all been written in plain English.
But the key thing is you have the ability to actually reference the resource, and you have the skills to use.
I'm also slow at that, but I'd rather peel it all back and just rework it to even down to things like voltage drops and stuff. I will do it time and time again.
So I have always had people when they've come up to me and they've said, I've maybe gone off on a bit of a tangent in a meeting, and then afterwards someone's gone, how did you know all that? And I've gone, well, I don't, because I don't. For me, the most important step in competence and knowledge is understanding where to go and get the knowledge. Yes. It's like, for me, I don't have the encyclopedic knowledge of standards that Paul Skirm has. However, I know the standards exist. I know the directives exist. If someone asks me a question, I'm on it straight away. And within 5-10 minutes of reading, I've got the answer. I've formulated a way of transposing the written word into the context of what I'm being questioned or what I need to do.
And that's all you need to be a competent person. All you need to have is competence, the technical knowledge and experience relative to the nature of the work. And that means do the reading days before the work.
Yep.
So when I do training, there are people who do training and they train one subject only, PAT testing only, regs only. That to me, I would just turn my brain off, and there's no point. So I want to do one subject, then another, then another. I always want to try to learn new subjects, new things.
You've got to push your boundaries.
And when I go to deliver another course, I look at the presentation, then I look at the reference material, and that's how I remember things like HSG 85, HSR 25, because I keep going there. Doesn't mean I know the content of them, but it means I know where they are.
The reason I know it is because you constantly mention it to us. And first time I hear it, I go, what's he talking about? Oh, yeah, that thing I remembered 10 years ago, and I better remember the name now. Otherwise, Dave's going to think I'm a tick if I don't know
That's the point. Competent people don't need to know all this information. They just need to have confidence in where to find the information, to be able to read it, interpret it, apply it to their work and their requirement, and then stand by.
You know what my task I always set for an apprentice is, and that is I always say to people, you don't need to memorise the wiring regulations. By the way, if someone is not unzipping their flyers as we speak.
No.
I realise how sensitive his mic is. He's actually opening his bag.
I'm opening my bag to check because I actually have got part of my toolkit is a actual mobile library, and I have got one,
there is no
2, 3,
going
4,
on.
5,
Listeners.
6, 7. I've got 7 books that I permanently carry around with me in order to reference.
So I have always said to learners and people in college that the regs is quite overwhelming. The EAWR can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
What I've always said is the 6 pages that is chapter 13. If you read that multiple times, say 5 times, read it, over a period of a couple of days, read it multiple times, then go and read the electricity at work regs and try and map each regulation number to what they believe is an electricity at work regulation. They will immediately understand that hierarchical link.
Right. Yeah.
They will do it. They will understand it. So immediately they'll go, but if that's not right, that's breaching Regulation 8, earthing and ponding, which is statutory. They'll immediately understand, and it arms them to the teeth straight away.
Well, do you know, we're going to have to do a YouTube video one day, Paul, where I'll read out the regulations from chapter 13, and you'll be going through HSR 25. There it is. There it is. There it is.
We'll do a podcast on that. We'll do
bang, bang, bang.
It's a great example. It's a great example.
It's the best. It's the best tool. I gave it to a young lad who was a 3rd or 4th generation Spark. And he was with me on work experience. I went, oh, here you go. Just try this. And he was just on it. On it. In fairness, Sparking was in his blood. He's now, I think he's a 3rd year apprentice, maybe 4th year with Tommy Clark's. So, yeah, he's very lucky in that respect. So before we kind of wind this up, because this is going to be a bit of a short one tonight, I'm going to ask you 2 questions, very lean answers, please. What state do you see the industry in, and what measures do you think we could take to improve it?
It's currently in a bit of a state of flux, I think, is the best way of putting
words.
it. Some areas are on the decline and are becoming what's the word? They don't sort of have any substance, don't have any worth. Latest this week, I noticed that a catalog tool company is now selling EV chargers.
Yeah.
Where that kind of that makes me feel undermined.
Well, it makes the last 2 years and the whole rewriting of Chapter 722 and Amendment 1.
Yeah,
I've just bought one. No, I'm joking. I haven't.
all those CPD articles, all that information, all that backwards and forwards, and then someone can still go and buy their own.
The industry has no gatekeepers. These companies, these catalog companies, should be banned from selling all of these materials. I think that's one thing everybody in the electrical industry would agree with.
Yeah, every electrician who wants industry to improve would probably agree with that.
Yeah, and it's no different from when I was in the tools and fixings. It's no different from the manufacturer going straight to the general public, and you get completely cut out.
Yeah,
that's
greed, isn't it?
Yeah, and everybody's got to earn a living. It's not about I haven't got a Ferrari on the drive.
But if the manufacturers supported the electricians better, they would earn a fantastic living. It's just greed. I mean, we know there are Sparks who will buy certain. I'll be very careful what I say here, but there are certain wholesalers that will sell certain products for ridiculously inflated prices. Dave knows what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, and I agree.
I mean, stuff that should cost a Spark 8-9 quid, they'll end up paying £40 for.
Yes,
beyond the RRP that the manufacturer originally says to sell them.
Yeah.
And the original manufacturer then sits there and gets a bad reputation and gets very frustrated because of the greed of massive multinational wholesalers. You scumbags, you.
Yeah, who when you go to one branch for materials, when you're far from home, and I completed a job and I came back to my local branch, they refused to take them in and give me credit for the returns.
Same company.
And I said, but you're all the same. Yeah, but you didn't get them from this branch.
Yeah, because they've divided them up now. They're competing against each other to be the best branch.
Well, this is it. It's all
disgraceful.
I'm probably going to say the wrong thing, but it feels like the bigger ones are like estate agents of the 80s. It's all fancy haircuts, wide awake shirts, targets, bonuses, holidays, golf trips. So you've
been to CEF Live then? Sorry,
I didn't say those letters.
I remember when I was on the tools. I remember when I lived in Bracknell in Berkshire at the time. I came across a nice little small, wholesaler, little small one scale one in Wokingham, right near the train station. And it was right when Part P had come out and we started talking about fire rated light fittings.
Mm-hmm.
And he found that he sourced this light fitting. He always honored that price, even when the actual price was going up. He kept it at that price, and he'd always tell me about potential inflation or potential things going up. But weeks ahead of that, it took 6 months of that. I had accounts with Grants or AC Electrical, which then became the Electric Centre, which is now that it's a different name. They keep changing. Same one centre, but they keep changing. There was Cities Edmondson. I just kind of stopped using them.
Yeah,
I kept the accounts open just for those essentials. For example, I'd use Electric Centre because the guy there could get. This is back when MK was pretty credible.
When it was good,
he could get MK the next day, whilst a lot of other places we have to be next Monday. Different wholesalers can get you stock at different rates. And you start to use one wholesaler because he gets you this bit quicker, and then this wholesaler gives you this, and you end up juggling wholesalers.
You do, for one order. You're doing
for one order. You start, I'll get this from this, this from this, and
which then eats into your time, which eats into your profit, which then causes you to be chained to the desk.
Yeah.
In order to facilitate one job, and then you've got multiple channels for multiple suppliers coming in, and it's a nightmare. I use an independent in Howsham who are very good, get me exactly what I need to do. They run delivery vans, and I probably could get things cheaper elsewhere, but it's not. I'm not.
It's
looking
not about
at that
it all the time for you, though, is it? It's about the work. It's about the actual
I'm
management.
a big fan of developing relationships and loyalty as well,
especially
with local wholesalers as well, the ones that really, family businesses. I don't mind using the Edmondsons, the CEFs, the WFs, and all the rest of it. But we've got such a choice now. But I'm still a fan of having friendships and all. I mean, I used to use Eddies and WFs a lot. CEF, I would use them only when I needed to because they were so expensive.
Yeah. And not only that, you do get. They do cast you a line to hook you in.
Yes, they do.
On hollow promises. Mm-hmm. Oh, it'll be here tomorrow. It'll be here the day after. 3 days after that. Where's my bits? Oh well, we had a problem. Look, I don't need the backstory.
I don't need
that's
the problem.
I don't. It's not my. It's now my. It is now my problem because I've got a job to do.
Yep.
But
I agree.
Yeah. So.
Have the integrity to fulfil your promises or the business. Yeah.
So I'd rather pay. I'd rather pay another 20% somewhere else and actually have it on my van to do the job.
So. I think, do you know what? I'm not being funny, Dave, but I think we could probably do another podcast just on the state of wholesaler arrangements and wholesaler relationships. No, because you've just literally I've just thought, you know what? We actually could do an entire podcast talking about our experiences of wholesalers, or maybe
and it's
Dave,
evolving.
Why don't we get a wholesaler? So if anyone listening works for a wholesalers,
good idea.
Please feel free to get in touch, info@e5group.org.uk, and you're more than welcome to come on. We promise we will be gentle, and if we get one on, we should always balance it up by getting another on as well, so that we can allow others to tell their tales and talk about what service they provide and their values and all the rest of it. I think that might be good. How do you think, if you were given 3 wishes to fix the industry? Okay, you can't use one wish to say the industry is perfect in every way, but if you had 3 wishes where they would come true, what would you do to improve what would you use them for to improve the industry?
I would like a lot more clarity. More clarity with regards to who is actually not in charge. Well, not who is in charge, but a chain of command as to actually where we are.
Is our industry actually regulated?
Yeah, where no.
I'll tell you now.
But so you think also communication with that kind of.
Yeah, where am I in the pecking order? I can call myself an electrician. Others may disagree and say that you can't call yourself an electrician unless you've done X, Y, and Z. Everybody is entitled to their own opinions. I freely post my work on Twitter for comment. And allow comment. I've been pulled up on a couple of bits, and I fully take that on board. I'm not, I can't do absolutely everything 100%, although that's what I strive to do. It would be nice to know what rung of the ladder we are on.
Okay,
who's on what rungs, because it would give you more respect for the industry.
Right, so that's your first wish then. Where are we in where we sit within the industry? That's your first one. What's your second and third wish for this industry?
For it to be a happier place.
Good one. Love it. Free hugs, by the way. I offer free hugs to everyone I meet, just to be clear. And shake my hand.
Yes, I've heard this.
Yeah,
I'd like it to be a happier place. But I do not getting too heavy. I do understand that there are a lot of issues. So lone working is a big issue, especially when you're under pressure to earn money to survive, to live, to keep your family, keep a roof over your head. But then you've got a big set of regulations gnawing in the back of your head, going, "Oh, it's got to be done like this. It's got to be done like that." So the pressures are immense to do a proper job.
Yeah.
And lone working is gives you time to ponder, question. It can be a very lonely place, and it can be as your previous podcast. It can be a dark place at times. Yeah. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I witnessed a suicide on the railway, which kind of strengthened as a trainee, and that kind of strengthened me up no end. But it's still there, and
that kind of thing never goes away, does it?
No, those sorts of things. But it's character building. Everybody's got issues. I just think in today's society there's a lot of pressure. It was a lot nicer when there wasn't social media, when there wasn't mobile phone. For me, when there was no mobile phones, you went out to work, you shut the door and you went to work, you did your job, you came home, and it was great. There was less distractions.
And that's in all areas of industries,
absolutely.
All cultures. I mean, I've got 4 boys growing up, and I say to my wife, I'm petrified of the behaviors on the internet these days. Applications like TikTok and these things, which kids are taking those things to school and they're taking videos of themselves, and a lot of kids and young adults now, they determine their success on their likes or their comments, and a lot of people grade themselves. And there's a lot of abuse and a lot of bullying, and I agree. I think social media
is dangerous to mental health. It really is.
It is.
Not being sexist whatsoever, but I have an appreciation for the young girls, the pressure that's put on them to look a certain way. And I think the trade is a similar thing where we're deemed to have to work in a certain way, and the pressures there are immense to conform, especially if you interact on social media. So I want it to be a happier, more engaging place. More.
So your last wish. What would it be for our industry? A happier place, without a doubt. I completely agree with in every way, shape. I wish different parts of our trade would just stop bitching. And I also, what resonates with me, what you've just said as well, is the guy working by himself who's desperately trying to pay his bills. And one of the reasons why we keep doing these podcasts is the old formula I use with colleges is the more you learn, the more you earn. Because I remember being in houses doing up Y&S plans that was actually a W plan, thinking, how do I figure this out? And the more I applied myself to learning, the less stressed I was. The less stressed I was, the more confident I became. And when I came to those complex challenges, I was able to work my way around them without living on a job till 11 o'clock in someone's. I mean, I remember when I was first doing domestic, I was literally sat in people's houses till 10 o'clock at night trying to
absolutely
fix stuff and do stuff, having dinner with them, for crying out loud. Moving on, third and final wish, and then we'll wind this up.
Well, okay, some value. I think electricians are undervalued.
Oh God,
Okay.
I think we're very undervalued as a trade. I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he told me how much the plasterer was charging.
Yeah.
Now, if I charged what the plaster was charging, let alone over and above what he was charging, I'd be laughed out the door, because all the customer sees is a £2.95 socket on the wall.
And the worst thing is they're deemed a skilled trade, like tilers. My mate owns an electrical contracting company, and he had an agency ring him up to offer labour, and they were offering tilers more money than sparks.
Yeah.
And yet we're supposed to be the scientists on site, dealing with that PVC prison with those electrons desperately trying to get out and kill
absolutely.
people. And yet, I don't know.
The problem again, this goes back to the whole purpose of why I started my little journey before I got into E5 with Spark and Ninja. You know, trying to inspire electricians to respect themselves, to build themselves up, leveling up. The idea being, we don't have to be where industry says we need to be. We've got a lot of people telling us you don't need to do that, you don't need to learn that, you don't need to try that, you don't need to do that anymore, or whatever. And we need to just, start standing up taller than we have been.
Yeah.
And there's been too much. I mean, I've said it in previous podcasts. People being authorized into our industry are not being properly controlled, not being properly quality checked, and we have too many people in this industry that do not achieve the same level of quality and just don't have the same level of respect for themselves, because they don't see the value. You come to the word value you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
They don't value themselves the same way that someone who's done a 4-year apprenticeship at an ONC would.
Is that because they've taken a different? It's not. Is that because I feel it's because they've taken a different, maybe an academic route, and then all of a sudden they're a manager within an organisation, and they don't have the skill set and the understanding of the graft that's put in.
I think it's different.
The coalface,
different courses, and you're limited by your own experiences and what you've been taught in the first place. When I was an apprentice and people were going back to the banter stuff, when people were having banter with me, they were using banter with terms and stories and phrases of stuff that I had no real knowledge of in society. Never mind references to people that I'd never been educated on. So I would sit there just feeling like a dumb idiot, not understanding any of the context of what was being, the piss taken out of me. I didn't understand it at all. No. And that's just part of the journey of growth and development. I think I've put that down. A
lot of the time with that older rhetoric, though, we'd still have the senior guys on the site. We'd have the clerk of the works. We'd have the bosses. We'd have the governors. We'd know that there was a level, and we know that we can maybe get there one day. But many sites these days, that's a bit of management that maybe with the Peter principle doesn't actually know the competence that is required by them on the field. So that person doesn't have the technical competence to then overlook you and shadow you, to inspire you to climb a ladder.
That's it.
You find yourself the most competent person on site being treated like crap.
Yeah, and you can't. There's no way of trying to better yourself if them above you won't allow it or endorse it.
Yeah.
Right, chaps. We're near the hour mark, so I'm going to wind this up now. Chris, I think if you'll have us, we'd like to have you back maybe to discuss more, because I think we've only scratched the surface on
I've written a couple of things down.
The debate that we can talk about so much more, and I think we need to give you more time on another evening, if that's okay with you, sir.
No, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure, and I'm awesome. Grateful for I'm grateful and humbled by you asking me to do it. To be quite honest, I don't take praise. Don't take praise well, as I've been told in the past, but it's a pleasure to have spoken to you.
Neither do I. Trust me. To me, it's the mark of humble people, which is good people. Dudes, thank you very much. I think we'll end this with the usual thing. So, thank you, Chris. Please follow him, Chris. Electrical Juice on Twitter. And Dave, as always, love you. In the way a man should love a man, obviously. And until the next one, take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye.